So we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to another Ambitious Dentist meeting. Today we have Dr. Tamika Nickleberry. And Dr. Tamika, if you want to introduce yourself a bit.
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Tamika Nickleberry. I'm a general dentist in the Houston area. I graduated from undergrad at Prairie View A&M University in 2001, and then I graduated from dental school at Baylor, which is now Texas A&M College of Dentistry, in 2005. Since then, I've been living in the Houston area. I have 3 offices here, and we're planning right now to open the 4th location, hopefully 2026, middle of 2026. So just continuing to grow, learning dentistry and the business of dentistry as I go, for sure. I think it is a continual thing that you'll forever work on, honing your craft. I don't know that anybody wakes up and says they've arrived. So it's always something that you're having to groom and hone in on from a clinical standpoint as well as business.
And Doc, can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
Sure. I can, yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, 4th location. We have a lot to learn from you. That is awesome. Congratulations on that. That's a huge achievement.
Thank you. Well, I can definitely say it has been learning on the go. I don't really have any formal business training. I have, taken CE courses. I'm a part of a lot of mastermind groups that has and is continuing to teach me how to be a CEO. Um, Unfortunately, in medicine, you don't have a lot of time to work on that. You will find that being a CEO of your organization is just as important as being a top clinician, if not more important in some instances. So I've learned a lot on the go. I can't wait to share with you guys.
Love that. And if y'all could turn on your cameras too, this is an informal meeting. We're just here to get as much as we can from Dr. Nickleberry. So go ahead and turn on your cameras, especially at the end when you have questions. Let her see your face, let her, feel all that. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about what's to come. So this panel aims to inform students considering opening a practice in the future. We're gonna have Dr. Nickleberry answer a couple questions that were provided earlier. Then we're gonna go on to the updates of what's to come in the ambitious dentist community, as well as audience Q&A. So a typical format of how we run our meetings.
Okay, perfect.
So the first question is, what motivated you to open your first practice, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I've got the questions, and I will definitely go through and try to answer them. But you guys, please feel free to stop me at any point. You don't have to wait until the end. I don't want you to miss your opportunity to ask your question. If you walk away with questions, then it's your fault. I want you to ask whatever it is. There is no stupid question. I'm here to definitely share. So the first question about what motivated me to open my own practice, I think I always knew I wanted to. I went into Prairie View knowing that I wanted to be a business owner, and I knew that I was going to go into medicine. At the time, I wasn't totally sure which branch, but when I landed on dentistry, the business aspect was a big part of the reason why. At the time, dentists were definitely striking out on their own to own their own organizations, where a lot of physicians were backpedaling from the autonomy of business ownership and matriculating into big hospital systems. It's rare now that you see a physician that's a independent owner or a sole proprietor. Dentists traditionally have always been that. And so it was a really big attraction for me. I wanted the autonomy to be able to practice dentistry the way that I saw fit, to be able to treat patients and build relationships in a way that was a reflection of who I am. I wanted to be my own boss. I really didn't want anybody telling me what to do. That's really the short of it. Now, at the time, I had no idea what that meant, but in my mind, being my own boss was good, right? I felt like I could create the life that I wanted, do things the way that I wanted to do, and for the most part, I have been able to do that. One of the biggest things for me was creating my vision, right? Was seeing my vision on paper be birthed into real form, being able to see that play out on a day-to-day basis. I really just kind of wanted things the way that I wanted them. I When I first got out of dental school, I worked for corporate dentistry, and I did that for almost 4 years. But I walked in the door with the mindset of, I am going to open my own practice. I said it in my interview. So they knew what I was there for, right? I think I practiced excellent dentistry while I was there. I learned a lot, but they knew that my goal was to start my own practice. And so I spent a lot of time outside of chair side at the front desk, figuring out how they're verifying insurances, with the girls that are answering the phone, with the treatment coordinators, with the office managers. I was slowly trying to piece together my business of dentistry and how I was going to practice so that when I was ready to open my own practice from day one, I felt like I could run an efficient and successful business. Um, Also, I felt like I wanted to see myself do it. You oftentimes see a lot of dentists that are business owners, but they are not really people of color. So when I got to dental school, probably half of my class came from dental families, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparents were in dentistry. And so it was very appealing to me to do something that we did not see being done every day. Also, women running a business, that was not a big thing when I graduated from dental school. My graduating class, almost half of my class were women, and Baylor was traditionally white men. So when alumni came back and got a look at my class, they were blown away at how many women providers were in the room, and just to see us do it at a higher level, because I do believe that we can be excellent clinicians and business owners and moms and wives and all the things that women are called to be. So ultimately, that's kind of what led me into business ownership. I always knew it was something I wanted to do.
Yeah, I heard a lot about shadowing, looking over the office managers, what they're doing and what they're ordering. So I'm glad that you
I
mentioned.
definitely recommend that even as you are out interviewing for your job, to be asking a lot of questions. You'll get a feel for where you want to work. If you're in the interview and you're asking questions about the management and the business of dentistry, you're going to be able to pick right away if your employer is for that, if they just want you to be a workhorse. And you got to decide if that's for you, right? If they're kind of shutting you down from an interview standpoint, oh, don't worry about that. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Well, that may not necessarily be the place for you if your idea is to learn everything you can about business and dentistry. You definitely want to make sure that when you're interviewing for jobs, you're looking at the space of what you want to gain out of it and making sure that they're on board with that. You can't go into a place that doesn't foster the growth and development of its associates, and you want to be an associate that wants to grow and develop.
And Chantel, you have a question? Feel free to just speak, unmute yourself.
You're still muted. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
And yeah.
So I just had a quick question. I know that you said that you kind of went into, um, I guess the DSO that you started with the idea of I'm going to own my own practice. Starting on that journey, what made you make the decision to go the DSO route as opposed to trying to work with like a private clinic and seeing like how they run it? Like, was that even something that was on your mind, or was it just, it worked out that
Honestly,
way?
I just didn't know any better. At the time, DSOs were the ones that were recruiting out of dental school.
Okay.
I was afraid not to have a job because I needed the money. I mean, that's the short of it. I really needed the money. And so you will
Mhm.
find that DSOs tend to recruit heavier and put forth more of an effort. For private offices, you got to do all the work to go seek out a private owner and make the connection and the relationship. Now, what I found with my associates now is that the money is the same or better. Most of the time, the money's actually better. DSOs, they can play a lot of games to keep you from earning what you really should be earning. I got really lucky because I was at a very small DSO. It was just Houston based. It wasn't a national company. They had 7 offices and they really ran it like a private office. Um,
Okay.
Great mentors through that organization. The Baylor alumni, his father was helping run that organization. So it was just a good fit. Honestly, I got lucky. There are so many more options now. And I think in hindsight, and this is what I tell my associates, you really need to try to take your week and maybe break it down between the two different organizations to work for, because what you're trying to get is experience. The benefit of DSOs is you get the speed, right? They teach you how to move, but you don't get the benefit of seeing your work come back in. So you don't really know how good of a dentist you are. You don't get to see your treatment planning play out, because a lot of times you've got a business brain fixing your treatment plan. So you don't even know if you really treatment planned it right and what that's going to look like. I think it's a better idea to break your week down. Maybe I do half of the week with a DSO and I find half of the week to go shadow with the private office. In full transparency, one of the biggest issues with working in private offices is a lot of dentists aren't good at business. They don't know whether they can afford or have the work for an associate or not. And so sometimes you get left in a space where there's really not enough patience for you to really grow on. The best recommendation is to find somebody like me who's got 3 or 4 offices. You know there's going to be enough work there. And that's hard to do. You don't always, you don't always find that. But I think those are the best mix to make sure you're getting a lot of business and a lot of speed. And then you're getting a lot of clinical side, a lot of small patient care, a lot of relationship building. Because if you want a successful business, both of them are equally important. You really cannot have one without the other. You got to be able to meet patients where they are and treatment plan well and provide great dentistry and build good relationships. And then you've got to be able to balance a checkbook and read a profit and loss statement and budget and forecast and all the things that come along with business that you're not going to be taught in dental school.
Okay, I actually had a follow-up question too. Sorry to keep asking,
Okay,
but
please.
I think another thing too that you mentioned is like, having a balance between maybe working for a DSO and, getting to shadow like a private practice. So for us, how can we present ourselves fresh out of dental school to a private practice owner that we're worth your time, we're worth your investment? Because I think a lot of the times private practice owners, they want somebody that already knows what they're doing. But like if, we see something like what you have going on, what are some things we can say or do to make, you know, being fresh out of dental school, like how can we basically impress you? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult to run up against, some other people that have maybe practiced a couple of years, and we ultimately have like the same vision of we want to open our own practice, or maybe we want to be an associate dentist. What can we say or do that would wow a practice owner? 'Cause it's kind of difficult to get our foot in the door.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think, one of my associates sent out her picture and like a highly polished like postcard. And that was the first time I'd seen that done. She just got the list of alumni from Baylor and just sent it out to everybody. It kind of had, a little snippet of what she's done in dental school and her goals, and then her picture. And we actually called her from that, which I thought was really amazing for her to take the time and the foresight to really go seek out private practices. She knew she didn't want to go into a DSO. I would do that. I would start there. I would start getting the alumni list and start going through that list and seeing who needs an associate by way of introducing yourself. It can be through an email, it could be something mailed, it could be both, it could be a phone call, it could be popping up at their office. I know time is limited, so I think emails and mailing things out are great. Ultimately, though, dentists know pretty much what you know coming out of school. Either that organization is looking for somebody that's got under 3 years of experience, or they're not. If they're not, then move on. Don't waste your time. You need to be looking at offices that are looking for docs that have under 3 years of experience, that are interested in coaching and mentoring and growing and grooming, and that have enough patience for you to see. And so when you get to the point to where you've kind of found your location, you want to start asking questions. How many new patients do you see a month? What's the average production? What's the average collection? I mean, those are 3 top things to make sure that that office can support you. But just to get your foot in the door, I think you got to be hungry. You got to be coachable. I mean, you got to know your stuff. And so I don't know where you guys are in your trajectory in terms of dental school, but what I always tell dental students, do as much dentistry as you can do. And you want to be cataloging, right? I want to be keeping notes. These are all the things I've done, and be transparent. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do, so that you find a place that's good for you. It's not just a doctor finding you, it's you finding a place that's going to really support and foster your growth and who you want to become as a dentist, because you don't want to be wasting time in an organization that's really not suited for you.
Okay,
Hi.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, sorry, can you guys hear me?
I can.
Sorry for not sharing my camera,
It's okay.
but I am actually a new grad. I graduated in 2024,
Okay.
and right now I'm working at an FQHC full time, like 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, which is it's been interesting. And then once a week, I work for a private practice. The owner is like a periodontist, just so I can some of the stuff I can't do at an FQHC, I get to do there, like crowns and
Sure.
restoring like some of these implants. I am also interested in becoming a practice owner eventually once I'm done with my FQHC requirements. And my question was, when you were opening a practice, how did you decide whether you wanted to do an LLC versus like an S corp versus like a sole? Like all of these things are a little bit complicated, or maybe hard for me to understand, but I was just wondering, how did you approach it and what made you decide going the route that you did?
When I first opened, all of my friends are attorneys. And so I used my best friend to do my entity paperwork. That was not necessarily the smartest idea, but it was the most cost effective idea. I have probably changed my structures from an LLC to a C Corp to an S Corp probably maybe three times since I've been in business. Those words and letters basically mean what kind of tax structure you're going to be under, and what benefits you most is who's in office, who's in the White House. That's just the high and dry of it. I have changed my corporate structure depending on who was in the White House and what the tax laws looked like, because that's a very easy process to do. I think I'm pretty set now to where I probably will be just because of the amount of money we make. But early on, every dollar saved is a dollar saved, right? You want to be in a tax structure that is beneficial to you. You need an accountant. These are things you need an accountant, you need an attorney. These are things that are hard to conceptualize spending for when you don't really have the money to spend for it. But I would challenge you to say that you can't afford not to. You want to be set up right the first time. There are so many laws considering the IRS and the way you need to be structured and the things you need to do, franchise fees, tax fees, state laws. You want to make sure that you have done all of the things, because those things are costly when you don't. So that's what I would encourage you to do, is get you a CPA. Hey, I'm thinking about opening my own practice. I don't have a lot of money. Can you kind of start coaching me through how I need to set up my structure? And then when you're ready to set up your structure, you will retain the services of somebody that can advise you. Right now, I am an LLC, but I'm a C Corp. So all three of my locations have their own tax ID. We share the same name, we have all the same systems, but when it comes to tax time, all of my entities are taxed separately, and then it rolls over to me. So when I pay taxes, I don't pay taxes under TLN Family Dental. I pay them as Tamika Nickleberry, and it's just the way my tax shelters are set up. There are a lot of classes for doctors, physicians, dentists, all kinds of doctors that kind of help you navigate some of those things. Honestly, I've never taken them, but I don't think it's a bad idea to make sure you're getting the best tax advantage that you can. But just in general, I will share with my first accountant, share with me, and now I think I'm on my third accountant. If you make $1 million, 300,000 is going to taxes, period. There's really no way around, there's no legal way around that for long. And the IRS is somebody you don't want problems with. So that's just a good rule of thumb. That's just the way the taxes are set up. Dentists do very well, but dentists aren't billionaires, right? So, I mean, okay, maybe one or two, but in general, you are going to pay taxes, right? You just want it to be as efficiently and seamless as possible. But if you make the money, you're going to spend some of it in taxes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I actually learned that dentists put their money in different places because dentists, they don't make that much. Well, they make a lot from dentistry, but they can make more in other, revenues. Do
Yeah.
you, as a practice owner of now, about to be four, like, is your money in other revenues as well, or is it like mainly from dental?
Yeah. So when you get ready to start thinking about a practice, we got to think about what kind, you have lots of things to think about, but what kind of practice do you want? Do you want an income practice where you are making money and you're pulling all the money out to fund your lifestyle? Or do you want to create a wealth practice where you're trying to create generational wealth out of that practice? They're two totally different things. And it's really important to decide what your game is. If your game is, look, I want to live the best life I can live, I want to make as much money as I can make, and I want to spend it on the things I want to spend it on, the way you set your business up is going to be different. For me, I am trying to create generational wealth. And so I don't pull every dime from my practice. I take enough money to live off of. I know what that dollar amount is. I have 401k and retirement plans through my office. My team gets to participate. I match some of what they put in, which is what a lot of big companies do. Think Google and Facebook and all these other companies. But it also allows me to put a gang load of money away for retirement. So I do that. I have a financial advisor. I use them and we invest in the stock market. They make sure my insurance plans and stuff are set, my disability, my life insurance. I use some of those vehicles as investments. I have a 529 for my son. Like I fill all the buckets. And then once you've filled all those buckets, then I take money and I'll do real estate. So I have a friend, she and I have bought some condos and we continue to just duplicate that model outside of dentistry. I also have to keep quite a bit of money liquid because my game is to develop practices. So my goal is to have 5 or 6 locations that I can package and either sell to a DSO or break them into pieces and sell them to my associate. But in order to finance that, you're going to use debt. And so you need to have a certain amount of money in the bank. So what we learned during COVID is that you probably need about 6 to 8 months of your office expenses in cash. So I hold more cash than a lot of people. I also don't like to be broke. I'm also frugal and I also need to be able to sleep at night. Money in the bank helps me sleep at night. Now, money in the bank is not really making me any money, but the trade-off for me is that I've got money in other places and I know what this money is going for. This money is going to develop another location or to make sure that I can keep these locations that I have going in case there's a down month or there's another COVID or something COVID like. So I think ultimately you got to decide what you want, because if I wanted an income practice, I wouldn't be able to do those things. I'd be taking home $700,000-800,000 a month and I would be essentially raping the business. There would not be a lot of money left over in the business. My game is something different. There's nothing wrong either way. If you want income, you want to ball out, then that's what you set up. If you want to create some generational wealth where you retire at 50 with $16 million to go on and do something else, then you've got to create that. But they are definitely two different strategies.
So the next question is, what should new dentists look for when buying a practice?
First of all, get you an independent broker. Okay, get you somebody that works for you. When somebody is ready to sell their practice, if I want to sell my practice, I'm going to hire a broker to find me a buyer. So essentially, the broker works for me as the seller and they work for you as the buyer. There's a total conflict of interest. You're never going to know what you're getting. So you want to hire your own broker that's not affiliated with the sale of a practice to start helping you source your location. And you need to make sure they're not lying when they say they don't work for the seller. Okay, that's the first thing, because you want to make sure that you've got pure advisement. You also need to make sure you've got an attorney and an accountant and an equipment specialist, because you need to know what you're getting. No matter how good you are at looking at accounting documents and reports, you probably won't ever be as good as an accountant. So hire the professionals that you need. I am not, full transparency, I'm not an advocate of practice acquisition. All of my practices are de novos. The first 5 will probably be de novos. I can't foresee actually buying a practice. I've tried it twice and I've always pulled out. You just don't know what you're getting. People are going to tell you their practices are worth X amount of dollars. They're telling you what they want to make off of it. The question now is, what is the practice really worth? Is the day the doctor leave, are you going to lose half of your patients and all of your staff? It's very, very likely. So you have to plan for that. some people have made their careers off of practice acquisition. So it can definitely work. It's just not my cup of tea. But I think if you truly want to do that, you want to start looking at the demographics of where you're going, right? You want to do your own demographic study. How many people live within a 1 mile radius? How many people live within a 3 and 5 mile radius? How much money are they making? What's the college education? You use a real estate broker for those things. They can get you all the reports around whatever location you're looking at. And then you want to get you an accountant and a practice broker to go in and start pulling the numbers apart so you can see what you should pay for this practice. The odds are what they're asking for, the practice is not worth it. That's just the general rule of thumb. You need to be looking to pay as less as possible because that benefits you. If you are looking to buy a practice, you want to make sure that whatever you're buying, that you can grow. So if that practice is producing $1 million a year, you don't buy it to produce another $1 million a year. You buy it to make it produce $1.5 million the first year, $2 million the second year. You're buying it to grow it. If you can't grow it, don't buy it because it's not worth it. You can just build your own practice if you're going to keep it where it is. You also have to make sure you have to make sure you can maintain it, but you have to make sure you can grow it because that's where your income will come from. It's going to come from the growth. If a practice is producing $1 million, that doctor who owns it is probably taking maybe 200,000 home, but it's capped out. So there's not really room for you to come in and win off of that dollar amount because you've got a loan to pay. You got to take on all the bills. You got to pay all these advisors that you just hired, and then you got to pay yourself. So there has to be room to grow. So that's the main thing, is making sure that you have what it takes and you've identified what that practice is missing. So for example, if an office refers out all of their root canals, all of their ortho, all of their implants, that's an opportunity if you can do implants, ortho, and root canals, right? If they're doing all on X and fixed implant appliances, but you don't do those, that's a losing opportunity for you. So just looking at the mix of dentistry they're providing and making sure that you've got something to bring that they don't already have. If you are going to buy a practice, I would be planning for a full overhaul of the staff because most of the time that's what happens. They were loyal to Dr. A, you're Dr. B, and they don't like you. Or you don't do it like Dr. A does. Doctors do a lot of things to keep their teams, and oftentimes new owners can't afford to keep that boat up, right? There are just things that you can't afford to do, and you don't have the love and loyalty for them that Dr. A had. I do things for my team right now that most doctors probably wouldn't do. If I were to sell, they'd be in trouble because most doctors probably would not continue to do that. So you definitely want to look for those things. I would also consider all my other options. It's more than just buying a practice. If a doctor is retiring, you can buy their patients, you can buy their charts. And that basically means you're going to pay them when the patients come to your practice. That doctor's going to advocate that his patients now start seeing you as their primary provider. There are a lot of doctors getting ready to retire, and honestly, their actual practice is not really worth anything. It's the patients that really carry the money. So when you're buying a practice, you're buying the goodwill of a practice. Most of the time, the equipment's outdated, or it's, halfway in its lifespan. The building needs refreshed. The office needs to be updated. So those things aren't really worth a lot. It's the patients that really count. And so that's always a good strategy, to try to go in and buy patients. That's probably what I will do as I continue to build offices, is find who's retiring in my area and then offer to pay for their patients. That way, you got something real.
How are they able to guarantee you their patients?
They're not. That's why you don't pay them until they come, right? You don't pay them. You don't pay this doctor. Maybe I'm going to pay you $50 a chart once that patient comes through my office. What they can't guarantee is that they're going to stay, right? You can't guarantee the patient's going to stay, but it does give you first dibs at the patient. But yeah, you don't pay for the patient until the patient shows up. The other option is, if you're going to buy a practice, look for an office where the owner wants to stay on. Some people will tell you that's bad. I really think it's a good idea because it helps the staff get used to you. It helps the doctor transition his patients to you. It also keeps that doctor on board, so they have to redo any work that's failing, because you are buying everything. You're buying good crowns, you're buying bad crowns. And the patients are going to want you to fix the bad stuff. If you're the doctor and you look at their chart, they've never been diagnosed for deep cleaning, but they've got bone loss everywhere. You're going to be the first person to tell them that. They're going to want you to own it. They got a bunch of crowns where the margins are leaking that this doctor placed 5 years ago. They're going to want you to replace those, and they don't want to pay for them again. So you want to make sure that doctor is invested at least for a transition period. And to me, 6 months to a year is a good time frame so that they can take care of fixing some of their own headaches and help transition you into the practice smoother.
I see y'all are writing it down. This is some good advice. Also, in any of your offices, do you have specialists?
No, I don't. I have what we typically refer to as super GPs that will do third molar extractions under sedation, that will do implant placements. That's pretty much what we contract in. I am at the part where we are starting to look for a specialty department. So my goal is a periodontist, and either my docs are going to get really trained well in endo or an endodontist. My preference is that my doctors will do that, but ultimately we do want to have a periodontist on board. We're just starting to see more complicated cases of implants. Periodontists, in my opinion, have a better skill set when it comes to implant placement than surgeons. So that's my preference. You can use a super GP to do your more complicated. They don't necessarily have to be a surgeon. You just have to make sure that you're not advertising them as a surgeon. So that's one of the things I have to stay on my team about. They're not surgeons. We call them super docs. They've got lots of training in surgery. They do IV sedation. They do conscious sedation. So it's a great win to keep the patients in the practice.
There's no questions. We'll go on to the third one, which is what unexpected challenge of practice ownership do most grads overlook?
Leadership is what I would say. Two things: leadership and the actual skill set of dentistry. You have to be able to lead and motivate and inspire people. You have to lead and motivate your staff to achieve beyond themselves, right? Higher than they ever thought they could be. The problem with dentistry is your auxiliary staff, they typically are not very well educated. I I mean, think about going to a fast food restaurant and the person that's checking you out. That is equivalent to pretty much what your assistants are going to be, your front desk. I mean, I have one person in my organization that's not a provider that has a bachelor's degree. Dentistry does not pay enough to attract that kind of talent. You really don't start to see those people until you get higher up in DSOs or group practices like mine, where we're starting to build a C-suite, a CFO, a COO, a CEO, a clinical director. Most private offices, they don't pay enough for that. And so you are going to get what you pay for. So you have to learn how to lead and inspire somebody that works the drive-through at McDonald's, basically, is what I'm saying. And that is very difficult to do because you are not taught leadership skills. You also have to lead other doctors, and you've got to lead the hygienist. You are going to be the leader, whether it's your practice or not, because you are the doctor. You are the expert. You are considered to be the smartest person in the room. And we can't lead from a spirit of being condescending, or I'm better than you, or I don't have time for you. You have to lead with the spirit of love. So my leadership team, we talk about this. You've got to have a servant's heart. People don't care what you know until they know that you care about them, right? You've got to lead them like that. That is a skill set. Leadership is a skill set. You do not just wake up and start leading people effectively. You also have to be able to lead the patients. You have to be able to lead them into finding value for the treatment that you're presenting, and for them to go on and find the resources to put behind it. Most of the time, a patient is not just going to walk in and you're going to say you need $20,000 worth of dentistry. And they're like, okay, here's the credit card. No, you've got to lead them in believing in the value of it and the end result, why they need it, why it's going to make them better, for them to first hear you. And then now they got to go find the money to pay for it. So I think leadership is one. Having this actual skill set to do dentistry is another. dental school does not teach you nearly the amount of things that you need to know to survive. And so, one of the things I see as an issue with new dentists is we're taught and told you're going to make all this money, you're worth all this money, but nobody has taught you how to go and earn this money, right? You have to be able to sit down in a chair and earn it. And that sounds really easy, but it's not, because school has so many guardrails that when you get into the real world, it's totally different. And you've got so many people pulling for your time and your attention. You want to do a crown, you've got 3 hygiene exams. Most offices are not set up for you to work on 1 patient an hour. You need to work on 2 or 3 patients an hour, right? That's how you duplicate yourself and increase what you're actually worth. It's also being able to see dentistry from a broader view, practice comprehensive dentistry. Yes, can I do a crown, but how does this crown fit into a whole failing arch of teeth? And what can I do to speak to that? You are only going to get paid what your hands can produce. So always remember that. That's why my advice is, the more dentistry you can do with guardrails on in dental school, do as much as you can. And I mean as much as you can. If that's, I got to go beg for patients, I got to go stand over you while you work on your patient, you want to see and do as much as you can, because when you get in the real world, you're only going to get paid off of what your hands can produce. So I think those are the 2 things that are often overlooked when it comes to new grads.
And is there any questions before we move on to the next section?
I have a question. On top of, seeing and doing as much as you can while you're in dental school, what do you think you did or would you do differently if you could go back that prepared you for eventually practice ownership while you were in school?
Do more dentistry.
Okay.
I did a lot of dentistry. One of the things I loved about Baylor at the time is that they were, in the top percent of getting their graduates to pass the boards the first time. That wasn't really an issue there. They had a lot of requirements. I should have done more than that. There were times that I'm tired, I'm going home. I don't, it's Friday, I'm out, I've had a long week. I wish I had done more. I wish I had spent more time in specialty departments, because I knew that I didn't want to specialize. And as a general dentist, if you want to make money, you need to be able to do some things more than fillings and crowns, honestly. Not only that, but if you want to build relationships with your patients, I want to be able to give you all the things that you need, or at least most of the things. And if the things that I can't give you, I need to at least be able to see them. So I started doing full mouth rehabs maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. But I've always had them in my practice. So why was I not doing them? Because I couldn't see them. I had to first see them. And so I'm doing, I just need this 1 crown, but the whole arch is worn. No, you actually need 28 crowns. And it wasn't that my patients wouldn't pay for it. It's that I couldn't see it to talk to them about it. It wasn't until I learned how to do it. And now I see malocclusion, I see collapsed arches, I see wear, and I can talk to you about fixing it so that you don't get down the line and your teeth are nubs and now we're taking them all out and now you're committed to an all on X solution. It's just doing more dentistry. The more you do and the more you see, the better clinicians you become. So if I could do anything over again, it would be that. I would, 2 things. I do more dentistry, and then I would really think about my long-term vision in dental school. When I was in dental school, I was thinking 3 years, 5 years. Well, that doesn't get you very far down the road. It seems like an eternity at that point, but it's really not that far. One of the things I recommend is today, right now, you start thinking about what your end strategy is. How are you going to exit dentistry so that you can start building towards that? For the last 5 years, my business consultant has been asking me, what's your exit strategy? I don't know, because I really didn't know. And that's kind of sad, saying that I graduated in 2005, but I would plan longer. I would plan as far as life can take me. Now, you may change your ideas along the way, but I think you still need a roadmap. So those 2 things: see and do as much dentistry as I can while I'm in school, even if that means Saturdays going to somebody's practice and I'm just watching. They're not going to let you work, but I'm just watching. making sure that you can see as much dentistry as possible and start making your long-term plans.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so before Dr. Nickleberry, you could go ahead and drink some water and take a little break. I only really have one announcement though, and that is our next meeting is to be determined. We're taking a little break from our monthly meetings to kind of regroup and see where we want the ambitious dentist to go and make our meetings more efficient. That being said, we're updating our steering committee. Welcome Haley also to the committee. She will be our co-moderator moving forward. And if you are looking to be part of our steering committee, go ahead and sign up on our link on our Instagram at The Ambitious Dentist. And that is the only announcement I have. Other than that, Doc, whenever you're ready, we can, also follow us on Instagram, as mentioned. And whenever you're ready, these were questions that were asked beforehand. Maybe these people are inside this meeting today, maybe they're not, but this meeting is recorded. So in a way, this is for them. But also everyone that's here, if you have a question, go ahead and ask. Like she said, if you're walking out of here with a question that's not being answered, it is on you because she's here to answer them and she's doing a great job of answering them. So open up your mics and go ahead and ask.
I have a question regarding the finances involved in opening, especially a startup, knowing I don't know how much student loan that you had, but for me, I definitely graduated with six figures, even though I had the NHSC scholarship.
Yeah.
And then, so when you were going to your banker, how did you present your financial situation? Did they ask you any questions in terms of where your finances were at? What does that look like when you're a fairly new grad with a lot of student loans? And also, do you agree with, I've had a couple people tell me not to buy a house first, but to buy a practice first and then invest in real estate if I wanted to do real estate. Is that something that you did, or because I know you said you are a real estate investor as well?
Yeah. I don't know if I agree with that. Is you got to have somewhere to live. So I guess that would depend on what the interest rate is, right? Right now I'm really anxious to buy a couple of properties, and my financial advisor tells me I'm crazy because interest rates are high. She's like, the market's going to correct at some point. And so I think you need to look at that. Interest rates will never be as cheap. Money will never be as cheap as it's been. Those days are probably done. So now it's just more of a measured risk. And I'm not a financial advisor, but that's just kind of what I think. You've got to start balancing kind of out what you want. Banks are going to give dentists money. We're good investments. There's a high return on the money. It's rare that you see a dentist default, but you do see them default. I know quite a few dentists that have defaulted on loans and filed bankruptcy and had to walk away from practices. So that is a very real thing. What I encourage you to do in the job that you have right now is to be saving your money for your personal expenses so that you're not having to pull money away from the business. No matter what your business strategy is, if it's a de novo, if it's an acquisition, you need to be able to afford not to take a salary from that practice for at least 8 months. I would even tell you a year. When I opened my first office, I worked 6 days a week. I worked 2 days for a DSO. I just started backing my days out of the DSO that I was working for. And then I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday in my own practice. But I didn't take a salary from that practice until over a year. So I had saved enough money to live off of if I needed a cushion. And I made enough money in my DSO to pay my bills. That is what I would do. I don't know why anybody does it differently because stress can kill you, and owning a practice is stressful. I don't care how successful it is. I don't care where you get it. I don't care how you get it. It is stressful. And so you want to minimize some of that stress as much as you can. You don't want to be worrying about personal finances while you're doing that. So if you're going to buy a mortgage, get you a very affordable mortgage. This is not the time to go get your $1 million home unless your husband is also balling. I'm also speaking from being a single, because I was single when I started this. It was just me. There was no family money to fall back on. There was no boo that was a athlete. We didn't have those things. It was just me. And so I wanted to make sure that I could always survive and I wasn't stressed out about doing it. That has really served me very well. You won't have an issue getting money from banks, but that doesn't mean that that's a good thing. I borrowed what I needed to open the practice. I borrowed some working capital to make sure I had a little cushion to start paying payroll. And that was it. My first practice was not an extravagant practice. I am actually also rebuilding that practice now, just to put it in a bigger location. Just so we're at capacity and we need more space. But you do want to be careful about your lending strategy. You need to be interviewing these banks for whatever your goal is. If you know up front, my goal is to open 10 locations, then you should be saying that, because you want to make sure that your lending partner can partner with you through at least half of it. In other words, you don't want 4 practices with 4 different banks. And you will be debt financing these organizations, and you will be I don't know the word I'm thinking about, but you will be the one that's on the line for it. So in other words, I am collateral for my practices. Practice 1 is not collateral for practice 2, and practice 2 is not collateral for practice 3. You don't get the opportunity to let your LLC serve as collateral until you're like 4 million in EBITDA. That's a long way away. So you are going to be the collateral for your practice. And so that means that if something goes south, they're going to come take your practice and anything else they can get out of you. So just be mindful of that. You want to finance what you need. First of all, you got to know what you need. Then you want to finance exactly what you need. And you want to have saved money to live off of so that you do not need this practice to pay your daily bills. And that is part of the issue with why a lot of docs are selling the DSOs, because a lot of new grads quite simply can't afford to buy the practices because y'all already have so much student debt. And so you do have to think about that. I mean, I walked out with 6 figures, but it was like $125,000. I didn't have any college debt. It was an easier transition for my loan payments were like $400 a month. It was a very easy transition for me. I know that a lot of grads do not have that luxury now. And so you have to be strategic about the other debt that you take on. Sometimes a house is a good purchase if all things are equal. If the, interest rates are great, it's in a great location, it's going to appreciate, it's in a realm that you can easily afford. It's not a bad thing, but you don't want to jump out there and, take on a really hefty mortgage and you want to build practices. You're going to have to decide what the priority is. Is the priority that I want to build my practices first and then build my other life, or do I want to build my life first and then my practices first? My advice is to build your practice first. If you're young and you don't have any children, that's grind time. That's it. That's what you do in those years. You want to build your practice, your organization, get that thing afloat, get it sustainable. Then you can start. Then you're gonna have the money to go back and buy this big house that I want and this fancy car that I want and all the other things that you want.
Thank you. That was really great advice.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I've been hearing that keeping it simple and having one dental office and 1 to 2 chairs is ideal for a dentist and their peace of mind. When dentists start to scale, it gets unnecessarily complicated. What are your thoughts on that?
My goal was to scale. So I am I am attracted to the hunt. If you don't have the stomach for the hunt, you shouldn't be hunting. You should not. And so I think that goes back to what I originally said. Do you want an income practice or do you want to build generational wealth? An income practice, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with a 1 office, 2 chairs, but you just got to know that that's what you want. Because if you decide I'm gonna build this 1 office, I'm gonna have, let's say, 3 chairs, and I want 1 hygienist, I want 1 assistant, 1 front desk, and that's it. 10 years from now, you can't turn around and say, I want to take this practice and sell it to a DSO for 6 or 7 times the multiple, because it probably won't sell, because that's not what they're after. They're after bigger practices with a bigger footprint. I have a friend that has 1 location. She just rebuilt her location. I think it's like 12 ops. that she just wants one big location. So there are plenty of ways to do it. I think peace of mind is whatever peace of mind is to you. Having 3 or 4 locations, it is peace of mind to me. I was very bored in one office. That's not to say that that game is for everybody. So I think if that's what brings you peace of mind, do that. You can be very successful and you can live a great life just like that. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. But yes, the more offices you add, the more people you have to manage, the more patients you put on your roster, the more complicated life becomes, for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question. I wonder how much exposure you've had to any international dentists trying to like seeking sponsorship. Do you know, have you ever offered that, or do you know if that's a thing in even private practice, or is that more of a DSO route?
It's more of a DSO route. Yeah, I don't know any dentists that have sponsored them privately. You put a lot on the line to do that. All the places I've seen that happen have been in DSOs. And I think I don't know, you have to work for them for like 2 to 4 years, I think, for them to sponsor you. I have come across dentists that are working as assistants while they're trying to find their sponsorship, but never to actually sponsor them.
Okay, thank you.
Now, this could be a bit forward, but I just learned about property tax in terms of like even if you buy a house, like you have to still pay tax on that, and I didn't know that. So like Woodland mentioned earlier, we're 6 figures down in debt and it's not 100. And then we want to buy a practice and then we still want to purchase a home. Is
Right.
this all just circulating debt? Like, are we ever going to be debt free, or is it just one debt to help pay off another debt? Yeah.
It depends on what your end game is. If your end game is to be debt free, then you need a plan to be debt free. Mine was not to be debt free. I am recirculating debt to build locations, and I will be debt free when I sell them. Then I'm going to make sure that I am selling for a dollar amount that's going to pay back my debt. Now, just so we have a timeline, I opened my first office in 2009. I bought a practice about 2013, hated it, sold it. I built my second location in 2015. I built a third one in 2023. I'm not building them fast because I want my debt to be minimized before I jump out and take on the next debt burden, if that makes sense. To some people, that doesn't make sense. They're like, oh, just get it all done in one time. But I am also trying to create a really good brand that is a reflection of me, and that takes time. So I am really invested in the experience of my patients. I want to make sure they're getting high quality dental care. That takes time to train a team and get a team ready to put them in a location that they can do that, right? So I'm not doing this quick by any stretch of the imagination. I I want my debt to be manageable. One of the things you'll find is as you get older, you cannot outwork your debt by yourself. So that's the game of multiple offices, and that's something you have to be mindful of. The more debt you take on, you can't go sit in a chair and cut enough crowns to pay back $2 million in debt. And so when I first got out of school, I could do that. My first location, no problem. I could work 6 days a week and produce all the dentistry I need to take care of this debt. But as you get older, you cannot do that. Your body will not stand up to that. And it's just not wise. So yeah, if you are trying to build locations, you are kind of recycling debt. If your goal is to be debt free, I know some docs that are debt free. Then you start paying down whatever has the highest interest rate. Oftentimes that won't be your student loans, right? If you're going to go buy a practice, those are financed over 10 years. The interest rate's probably higher than the interest rate on your student loan. And so you're not going to be throwing a lot of extra cash at your student loans. I personally don't think that's wise. You know, I've had some associates that have paid off some heavy student loans. They also had spouses that made a lot of money. And so it was easier to do that. But you've got to look at what your financial picture is. Cash is king, and you don't have it if you've given it all back to the student loan people, right? You want to hold on to as much of your own cash as you can. I'm still paying back my student loans. Could I have paid them off? Sure, but the interest rate was like 2%. Why would I do that? I'm not going to just give them, tens of thousands of dollars that I can be holding and investing and putting into these practices to build, but that is my strategy. I will eventually pay it off, I guess, but I'm not really worried about it. So whatever debt you have that looks like that, that's how I would treat it. So my business loans are 10 years. I'm not paying them off. Could I? Sure. Do I have the money for it? Absolutely. But I'm not going to pay that off because I'm going to use that money to go do something else that's going to make me some more money. Your perception and your idea about money have to change from being a normal person to being a business owner that wants to create wealth. It has taken me a long time to get there because I don't come from a family of money. My parents did not graduate from college. They don't own businesses. There are no doctors in my family. It has been a growing pain to get me to think about money differently. But you don't make money if you keep thinking about money like an average person. You got to start thinking you will never be average again. You can leave that behind today because you won't be that anymore. Even if you never own a business, you're still not going to be the average American. And so your ideas about money and how we spend money and how we make money and how we save money, how we invest money, those things definitely have to change.
How do you manage dental associates, especially from avoiding them taking patients or, I don't know,
We have very good contracts, I think, where we have a non-compete. And there are things in our contracts about patients, soliciting team members. I have one team member that was solicited by a doc that was only in my office temporarily. And I was very upset about it. It's very expensive. When anything walks out of your organization, it's costly to you. Turnover is very costly. If your systems are leaving with associates, it's costly. I haven't really had a lot of associate turnover. So I guess I've got lucky. I try to be very good to my associates. I try to balance business with who I am as a doctor and a clinician. I think they're all well paid. They have a good level of autonomy on how they treat patients. So I try to take care of people so that I don't have a lot of people walking away, but it's something you deal with. You got to make sure that your product is better than anybody else's, which sounds kind of cliche-ish, but it's the truth. So that when your associates leave, because you should be planning on them leaving, right? That should be the plan so that you're prepared for it. They're not taking my practice with them. But as we continue to grow and build our own intellectual property, our own training platforms, I threaten to sue you if you take it. And I do that up front so that I don't have to do it in the heat of the moment. It's in their contracts. And I probably would sue them if something like that happened and it was of a large enough dollar amount that I could feel it. I also, and I think it's fair to say, I'm not living for the next crown prep. I'm not living for the next Invisalign case we sell or the next implant case we sell. I don't live my life like that. And I would encourage you all not to do it either. You should not be made or broken by the next month in your practice. All of my practices do 6 figures every month, but if they didn't, I wouldn't die. I wouldn't starve. And I am intentional about that. We are not making athletes money. It does not come in large lump sums like that. And so you cannot live your life like that. You've got to live your life so that a couple of months of downtime or an associate leaving and taking some patients is not going to be to your detriment. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And personally, it hurts, right? Personally, it makes you feel some kind of way, as long as it doesn't hurt you financially.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
So I have 2 questions. One, when you take your first associate job as a new grad, at the time, do you use dental focus attorney for the contract review?
It's very hard to find dental focused attorneys, and they're also very expensive. I use my friend who's an attorney. If you got a friend that's an attorney, that's who I'd be using. Until my life got more complicated to where I truly needed a real estate attorney and a business attorney. If I had a friend that was an attorney, I used them. If not, then you probably could use a general attorney. It's something I think about all the time because we don't have enough dental focused attorneys that really understand what we're doing. And the ones that we have, nah, I haven't come across any good ones that aren't going to just charge you an arm and a leg. You need to have somebody look at your contract. Okay, don't go signing things. I just said you're no longer the average person. After this meeting with me, you are beyond average. Don't do what average people do. You've got to have an attorney look at the contracts that you sign. I don't care how solid the doctor tells you it is. I don't care. No, you need to have somebody sign it to look at it to make sure that your interests are protected. And it's a negotiation, right? You're negotiating with them. And so just because they give you something doesn't mean you have to accept it.
I see. So, and also like in the school, right, some faculty said we should enroll for the like disability insurance because like we are the dentists, we can get injury for some reason, and then we might lose potential income. So, how is your suggestion that if we need it, how
Yeah.
much kind of benefit plan we need it for new grad?
I got dental disability insurance right out of school. I encourage you all to do that. This is the cheapest it will ever be. The longer you wait, the older you get, the more expensive it becomes. I typically what they do, and I haven't looked at mine in a while, but typically what they do is they're going to ask you how much money do you need to live off of a month, and you're going to get a policy that matches that with some cushion, right? So I have a disability practice on me, a disability policy on me personally. I also have business overhead on the practice so that when we have hurricanes and if my office is trashed, it's going to pay me X amount of dollars a month for these practices in the absence of me producing. So when you get a business, you need to make sure that you get a good insurance agent that can get you all the policies that you need. You don't need more than you need, but you really need what you need. And part of that is disability on the practice. You personally, you need disability on yourself, and you need enough to replace your income. My policies are set up that after 90 days, it starts replacing my entire income. And that's what you need. If you need 60 days, then 60 days, 60 and 30 days are usually more expensive. So what I would say is make sure you've always got at least 90 days of your personal expenses saved. And then you get a policy that picks up at 90 days. And they will either pay you that until you retrain for something else, or they're going to pay you that out to your 65 and your retirement age. But I would not move forward without it. You'd be surprised how easy it is to have a skiing accident or a basketball accident or be lifting weights and slip a disc in your back or have a car accident. I mean, every part of your body is vital. That's one of the sucky things about dentistry is that my attorney friends can be in a wheelchair and they still make great money. I cannot do that. So when we do things like go skiing, I am wearing wrist guards. Full transparency, when I was practicing 6 days a week, there were things I would not do. Like I am not going to risk hurting myself for this, few minutes of fun because I need every body part. I mean, I've had gym injuries, and I mean that stuff really debilitates your life. So you have to be careful, and you need an insurance policy for the times that things happen that you can't control. I also think you need medical insurance. A lot of doctors don't get medical insurance, and I don't understand why. You make enough money for that. I know medical insurance is expensive, but you need a good health coverage policy.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question on student debt. Do you
Yes.
think it's wise to take the opportunity of loan repayment programs that will forgive half of your student loans in turn of providing dental services in an underserved area for a couple years? Usually, I think it's about like 3 years or so,
Mhm.
even though those areas would pay much less.
Yeah, I think if you've got enough student loan debt to warrant that, I do. You're still getting experience. The problem is that it's limited experience, right? You're not getting to do any complicated cases, any complex cases. You're doing bread and butter dentistry. And so you got to keep that in mind. What I would backfill that with is good CE programs. We haven't talked about that, but you need to be committing to doing continuing education, and you need to commit a certain part of your salary towards that. Some people say 10%, some people say 20%. You need to be allocating funds for continuing education. You will walk out of dental school knowing a fraction of what you need to know to survive. You've got to make up the difference. So that's my issue with federal programs. You're doing a lot of large fillings, a lot of, crowns, single crowns. You're not building out complex or comprehensive dentistry. And so from a skill set standpoint, you're going to miss that. So you just got to know how to backfill that. I think anything you can do for student loan repayment is helpful.
Would you, thank you. Would you also say that applies if you're planning on specializing in peds?
Yeah, if you're specializing in peds, then those federal programs are great to go to because you're seeing a lot of kids.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at least here in Texas, yeah, most of the docs that are in those programs are seeing, I mean, as long as you're not going into a prison, right? If you're working like for the city of Houston or the city of wherever, yeah, you're going to see a lot of kids. So for a PEDS program, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
I can elaborate a little bit too, if I'm allowed to. So I graduated in 2024. I don't know who asked that question, but I had the NHSE scholarship, which is pretty much almost the same as like the student loan repayment for HRSA. The only difference is they paid for my tuition the last 3 years of school. I work at an FQHC 4 days a week, and then to supplement that, I work private practice once a week, and I might add some Saturdays, but we'll see. But I do agree with Dr. K. No, sorry. Oh, Dr. N. It's very limited. I see adults. And one thing I would say to every student who's considering going to FQHC is to look at the state laws when it comes to what Medicaid covers. For me, I work in Rhode Island, so they cover crowns. But if I were to move somewhere else, some states don't cover crowns, so you don't do crowns. Or they don't cover root canals, so you don't do root canals. But for me, I get to do root canals, crowns, but some states you might not get that experience. So that's the only thing I would add.
Okay, thank you.
So now that you're about to open up another location, are you expecting yourself to work in these locations, or are you treating it more like real estate where you're just buying the property, hiring associates, and letting the money work for you?
Well, you're never really letting the money work for you. I haven't really, I haven't really figured out how you do that in a dental office. I feel like dentistry is so much work. I feel like I'm working harder now than I worked when I was working 6 days a week. Right now, I'm chair side 2 days a week, and then I spend the rest of the week managing the practices. I have a COO that technically manages the practices, but I spend my time training the teams, training the docs, just kind of making sure that things are running the way that they should. So I'm kind of from office to office the rest of the days. Out of the 3 locations, I'm only working in 2. I won't work in more than 2. So the plan is not for me to go and pick up a clinical schedule in another location. I probably will cut my schedule some again to where I'm really just working 1 to 1.5 days chair side. It's very difficult to do both and to do both well. You cannot do all things well. When I am chair side, I'm probably a horrible business owner. And when I'm a business owner, I'm probably not really thinking like a clinician should be. I use different parts of my brain. But when I'm chair side, you can't call me on the phone and text me and ask me things because my patients deserve 100% of my time and attention. So there are things that that aren't done waiting on me to get out of chair side on Monday. And that's not always great for business. So I won't go into another clinical schedule in another office. Right now, I probably will, just pick up days when a doc is out or when I have to, because I still love the clinical part of dentistry. I love that part now more than I ever did, but I'm also only doing the things that I really want to do and not all the things that have to be done. So that fosters a different type of love for dentistry. But ultimately, if I want the businesses to continue to grow and be great, I am going to have to probably step back some more from chair side.
Thank you. And are there any last questions? We're approaching the end of our meeting. No questions. Okay. So thank you all for joining. Thank you again, Dr. Nickleberry. Do not be surprised if you see a couple postcards at your fifth location.
Yep.
We'll be
Please send them. I'd love to have you guys.
okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I do have a question.
Yes.
I know you said not to leave here with any questions, so I wanted to make sure I got my question out. Compared to like all the other factors that you guys were saying, I noticed that I feel like I'm pretty young in the group. I'm currently a sophomore in undergrad and I'm pre-dental. So I just want to know like any advice you would have for someone that's like really early on.
Yeah, I think starting to map out what you want your life to look like. Everybody needs to be doing that. What kind of practice do you want? How do you want to build that practice? How do you want to exit that practice? What do you want your family to look like? You need a roadmap. And so the funny thing about building out your roadmap is it doesn't necessarily commit you to it, but it starts to give you some structure on where you're going. If you It also translates to like what you're doing in dental school, right? So if you know that you don't want to be a business owner for the next 10 years, then you need to start linking up with professors that know people that own practices that you can go work at. It's all about what your plan is, and that's very hard to navigate if you don't have a plan. And I mean plan as far as you can go, because if you plan for 5 years, 5 years will be before you know it, and you won't know what to do next. I was like, oh, I'm going to open a couple of offices, and I have a couple of offices. Now what are you going to do? And the why behind those things, right? So you really want to start writing out your plan. I also encourage journaling. Some of my best ideas come at 10:30 at night when I put my baby to bed and I'm in bed and I should be going to sleep, and all of a sudden I'm like up, my brain is going. Those are the times to write those things down. You should keep a journal by your bed because you don't ever know when those ideas are going to be needed. Even things right down to, like, I know somebody had a question about social media. Like my brain is always creative at 10:30, 11 o'clock p.m. routinely. And so I'm just writing things down. I wish I had done that early on, because now I would have a book of ideas to start pulling from. And you think those things may be outdated, but they won't be. And they may need a refresh, but they're still going to be valuable pieces of information that you've pulled out of your brain. So those are the things I would do. I would start getting a roadmap for as far as my mind can take me, no matter how ridiculous it may sound today. And then I would be journaling every day. I would be journaling my thoughts. I would keep it with me in the car, by my bed. So when these moments of creativity come, you can write them down. One of the things to me about science and medicine and dentistry is it stifles your creativity, because you're being taught a methodology, right? You're being taught systems and processes and how to get from A to Z. There's not a lot of creativity in that. But I think to be a very successful business owner and to really be able to stand out in a world of the sameness, you need creativity. And so when those moments hit you, you want to be recording them so that you can recall them when you need to.
Okay, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about my background being loud.